Welcome, everyone. I'm so thrilled to have you here for this explainer. Today, we're going to take some pretty abstract organizational behavior concepts and transform them into a highly practical, totally relatable toolkit for decoding your team's performance. If you manage people, or honestly, if you just want to understand why we do the things we do at work, you absolutely need to know how to build and manage a true system of motivation. We're going to unpack exactly how to do that by looking at the psychology of what truly drives us. Let's get into it. So, you know how it goes, right? You give a team member a raise or maybe a shiny new title, and for a few weeks, their productivity absolutely shoots through the roof. But then it just kind of fades. They go right back to their baseline level of effort. Have you ever wondered why that pay raise didn't keep them motivated for the long haul? It's a puzzle that literally frustrates leaders everywhere. To solve it, we really need to accept that motivation isn't magic, and it's definitely not a permanent state you can just buy with a bonus check. At its core, motivation is a defined psychological process. It's the engine that causes the arousal, the direction, and the persistence of voluntary actions. And there's a very specific sequence happening in our brains here. First, that psychological process kicks in. That leads to a conscious choice in behavior, which then finally results in some level of job performance. Now, as managers, we tend to get hyper-focused on the end result, the performance. But if we actually want to fix performance, we have to travel all the way back to the beginning of the sequence. We have to diagnose the underlying psychological process. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. Decoding workplace motivation. 2. ERG and evolving needs. 3. Hertzberg's two-factor theory. 4. Expectancy, the math of effort. And 5. Jacobi and employee empowerment. Okay, let's dive into part 1. Decoding workplace motivation. Basically, we can toss all the different motivation theories out there into one of two buckets: content theories and process theories. Content theories are all about internal needs. They try to explain what motivates people differently by asking, what is the specific thing driving this behavior? Process theories, on the flip side, focus on the psychological and behavioral processes. They ask, how do individuals make choices, exert effort, and perceive fairness? Keep these two distinct buckets in mind because our diagnostic toolkit is going to pull from both the what and the how. Moving right along to part 2, ERG and evolving needs. ERG theory simplifies our incredibly complex human needs into 3 neat categories. First up, existence needs. These are your basic physical and material wants. Think salary, a safe work environment, the essentials. Second, relatedness needs. This is our deep human desire for interpersonal relationships with our peers and bosses. And third, growth needs. This is the desire to be creative, to be productive, and to truly flex our skills. Now, unlike some older, rigid theories that claim you have to satisfy one level before moving on to the next, ERG theory makes a really brilliant observation. Multiple needs can be operating at the exact same time. We're complex creatures, after all. But here is where it gets incredibly practical for the workplace. It's called the frustration regression principle. This rule states that if the fulfillment of a higher-level need is blocked, the desire to satisfy a lower-level need dramatically increases. Imagine a brilliant employee who feels completely stuck in their current role. They aren't growing. Because that high-level growth need is blocked, they regress. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they might start complaining endlessly about their salary or demanding way more social time at the water cooler. They regress to demanding more existence or relatedness needs just to compensate. When that top-level drive for self-actualization and internal growth hits a brick wall, all that psychological energy doesn't just disappear. It flows downward. The person actively regresses to seeking external validation through social relationships or basic safety needs. So as a manager, if someone is suddenly obsessed with their pay or office politics, you really have to pause and ask yourself, is this actually about the money, or are they acting out because they're frustrated they aren't growing? All right, part 3, Hertzberg's two-factor theory. This one's a real game changer. Hertzberg discovered something totally counterintuitive. It turns out, the things that make people hate their jobs are completely different from the things that make them love their jobs. On one hand, you have factors leading to dissatisfaction. He called these hygiene factors. This is stuff like company policy, work conditions, relationship with the boss, and yes, salary. If these are bad, people are absolutely miserable. But, and this is huge, if you fix them, you don't magically get highly motivated employees. You just get employees who are no longer actively plotting their escape. To actually create real satisfaction and drive performance, you need the motivators. That's achievement, recognition, responsibility, and the work itself. Fixing dissatisfaction does not equal satisfaction. They are two entirely separate dials you have to turn. And this leads us to a massive revelation about how we use rewards. Extrinsic motivation involves tangible organizational rewards, salary, fringe benefits, contracts. The hard truth? Often, these are set by the broader organization and are entirely outside of an individual manager's control. But intrinsic motivation, the psychological rewards like a sense of challenge, achievement, receiving genuine appreciation and positive recognition, these are almost completely determined by the everyday actions of the manager. You might not be able to control the budget for raises, but you have absolute control over the intrinsic motivators that actually drive deep, lasting satisfaction. Which brings us to part 4, expectancy, or the math of effort. This is Victor Vroom's formula, and I love it because it takes human behavior and turns it into a literal equation. Expectancy times instrumentality times valence equals overall motivation. Expectancy is the belief that your effort will actually lead to performance. Instrumentality is the belief that the performance will lead to a specific reward. And valence is how much you care about that reward. Here is the absolute key takeaway. Because this is a multiplication equation, if any one of those 3 variables drops to 0, the entire overall motivation plummets to 0. No way around it. You could have an employee who knows they can do the work and knows they'll get the reward, but if they just don't care about the reward, motivation is 0. Let's bring that abstract term valence down to earth for a second. It's really just the importance an individual places upon the expected outcome. Imagine you have a highly driven employee who is desperately saving up to buy their first house. They are solely motivated by money right now. Well, if you offer them additional time off as a reward for crushing a big project, the valence of that reward for them is practically 0. They don't want time off, they want cash. And because valence is 0, the multiplication happens, and their motivation to push hard on that project flatlines. You absolutely have to match the reward to the person. And finally, part 5, Maccabee and employee empowerment. Maccabee hit the nail on the head here. He argues that people coming into the workforce today simply have different needs than employees did in the past. We literally cannot manage them the way we managed factory workers 50 years ago. Today, the work has to match the workers' dominant values for them to be motivated. This shift is exactly what's driving the massive popularity of empowered or semi-autonomous teams. Modern employees crave empowerment. They want organizational setups that give them autonomy, discretion, and unsupervised decision-making responsibility. And if you tie this back to ERG theory and Hertzberg, you see that this autonomy directly feeds those high-level growth needs and those crucial intrinsic motivators. So, we've explored the wild differences between just fixing dissatisfaction and creating true satisfaction. We've seen how blocked growth leads to regression, and we've done the actual math on how effort relates to valued rewards. We've built out your diagnostic toolkit. Now I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Take a really hard look at your own team. Based on everything we've unpacked today, what does your organization's system of motivation actually look like? Are you just fixing hygiene factors and hoping for the best? Or are you truly engineering an environment of intrinsic motivation and genuine empowerment? The answer to that question might just change the way you lead forever. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.